Morning, everybody. I think most of the attendees have joined, so I think we can start the session. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Ananya Shukla, and I'm the Client Relationship Manager, Personal Care at Ingenious. Along with me, I have Sanchita, uh, Priya, and Thomas. Thomas is the Thomas works as a director of business development for the European region. Sanchita and Priya both works as the consultant and takes care of the technical sides of the things. I will pause a little if Thomas wants to introduce himself and wants to add in something.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, Thomas, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. So, good morning. Thanks a lot for having me. I have the honor and the pleasure to be the new Director Regional Business Development Europe for Ingenious, and I'm really looking forward. I'm your European contact in future, so do not hesitate to contact me in case you feel necessary, and I'm as curious as you to listen now to the new trends in cosmetics. Yeah, let's look what we have today.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Sanchita and Priya, if you want to introduce, you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Ananya. So, myself, Sanchita, I'm working in Ingenious as a consultant, mainly in the cosmetic and personal care sector. So, mainly I'm involved in supporting clients with technology research, regulatory insights, and innovation strategy. So, mainly we have worked with brands and manufacturers in order to decode like what are the emerging trends, what are the white spaces in the domain, so that the product development can be better aligned with the evolving regulations and the consumer expectations. So, Priya, now over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sanchita, and good morning, everyone. My name is Priya, and I'm working as a consultant at the intersection of science, tech, and strategy. I primarily deal in cosmetics domain, and my role involves helping companies navigate market dynamics, identify cutting-edge technologies, and develop evidence-based roadmaps for growth across various regions. So, thank you for coming and looking forward to this. Sanchita, over to you. You can go ahead.
Okay, so let's start. Again, once more, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. So, before we dive into the technical depth of today's topic, so let's start like why this conversation actually matters. So, the European Union and the UK, they are collectively representing one of the most powerful and high-value cosmetic market, as we all know, and the annual valuation it exceeds more than $100 billion. But however, this growth has come up with increasing regulatory complexity. And today we see like sustainability, consumer safety, and transparency. These are not just the trends, but yes, they have become the legal requirements for now. And in this environment, staying ahead of these evolving frameworks, it's very important about like meeting regulatory obligations. So I would say like it's about securing your brand's credibility and safeguarding your market access. So firstly, I would like to talk about the EU's regulatory foundation. So the EU cosmetic regulation, it does not function just like a traditional rule book. But yes, when it has came into effect in 2013, so it has harmonized cosmetic safety legislation across around 27 EU member states, and it has established itself as a global benchmark for cosmetic regulatory frameworks. Every cosmetic product, I would say, whenever it enters the EU market, it must be backed by a cosmetic product safety report, that is CPSR. And this assessment include all the things like toxicological profiles, cumulative exposure evaluation, and any spatial consideration related to any vulnerable population. And I would say without the CPSR, market entry is simply not possible. Next comes the transparency that is also equally important, and nowadays the use of INCI, that is International Nomenclature of Cosmetic Ingredient, this has become a mandate for ingredient declaration. Then regarding the ingredient safety, there are some annexes like Annex 2 of the regulation. it currently lists over 1600 banned substances. And Annex 3, it restricts the use of another 1000 plus, and that is based on certain condition, like mainly due to concentration limit or the usage contest. Then these lists, I would say these are dynamic, means it gets constantly updated in response to any scientific data and any emerging concern. And the EU's 2020 Chemical Strategy for Sustainability, that is CSS, it has even marked a major shift. So now companies are proving ingredients, means that the ingredients are safe, not just the regulators proving that it is harmful. And the substances like PFAS, endocrine disruptors, and nanomaterials, these are all under heightened scrutiny nowadays. So now just I would like to give a brief about some annexes, which are nowadays compliance GPS within the regulation system. So Annex 1 means mainly there are 6 annexes. So the one, it establishes the structural framework for the CPSR. 2, if I talk about, so it serves as the definitive, means do not use list. Then Annex 3 contains the restricted ingredients with specific limitations. And the 4, 5, 6, it provides the safe list for approved colorant, preservative, or UV filters. Then if I turn my attention to UK, so the UK has retained much of the EU regulation, I would say, means after this Brexit one, but the way things work there, it has changed noticeably. So in the UK, the Office for Product Safety and Standard, that is OPSS, so it governs the cosmetic compliance in the UK, and a separate UK responsible person is even mandate over there. Means you just cannot rely on your responsible person. Then one of the most impactful consequences after this post-Brexit means in the UK, I would say that it's disconnection from the EU's REPIC system, which nowadays is rebranded as Safety Gate. So what actually REPIX does, it functions as an early warning system, especially for dangerous non-food consumer product, even including cosmetics. So what happens through this network, member states rapidly share alerts, means related to banned substances or contamination or labeling omission in any unverified product claim. So suppose if a product is flagged through REPIX, for example, like mercury or any allergen is there, then it can be removed from shelf across the EU within days. So, but yeah, UK no longer receives the REPIX alerts, means for now. Then let's move on to the next part, that is the key regulatory bodies that govern the cosmetic safeties in both the regions, that is EU and UK. And here we would be covering the regions that they cover, what are the core responsibilities, and how they interact actually with each other and with the industry. So firstly, starting with the European Commission, so it is often regarded as the legislative engine of the EU cosmetic regulation, and it mainly oversees 27 EU member states plus some EE countries like Iceland, Norway. And European Commission, if I talk about, it is mainly responsible for drafting and enforcing regulation like Regulation number 1223 2009, and it ensures consumer safety and harmonized standards across borders. And it even also operates the cosmetic product notification portal mainly for product registration, and it works closely with scientific advisory committees so that research can be translated into enforceable policy. And one practical example I would like to give over here, like in 2023, the EC collaborated with SCCS to design the scope of the microplastic ban, like including the definition and what should be exempted and all that. So this demonstrates like how legislative and scientific bodies coordinate so that consumer and environmental protection can be ensured. Next is European Chemical Agency. It is a key authority that oversees mainly chemical safety across EU and EEA, and with growing influence over cosmetics. While cosmetics are generally exempted from full REACH registration, I would say, but ECHA over here plays a very critical role in hazard identification and risk assessment for cosmetic ingredients. Those cosmetic ingredients, especially that pose environmental or occupational hazard, like preservative, UV filters, or fragrance substances. Then we also have Scientific Committee on Consumer Safety, and it is the gatekeeper of ingredient safety across EU and EA countries. So this is the independent panel that conducts in-depth risk assessment, mainly for cosmetic substances, particularly those that are classified as nanomaterial, endocrine disruptors, or allergenic compounds. Then, for instance, I would say the SCCS 2021 opinion on the fragrance allergen HICC, it led to its full ban in 2022. So the committee frequently collaborates with ECHA, NGOs, and even other expert groups so that emerging scientific insights can be integrated into consumer safety standards. Now shifting to the UK, so there is Office for Product Safety and Standard, that is OPSS. So it is the post-Brexit national regulator for England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. And this is mainly responsible for enforcing the UK's retained version of regulations, overseeing market surveillance, labeling, and recalls. And though the UK currently mirrors much of the EU regulation, I would say, but yes, it is free to diverge, like in its approach or timeline to banning PFS, depending on UK specific evidence and economic impact. And supporting this OPSS, there is one scientific advisory group on chemical safety as well. That is the UK's independent panel of experts, and they mainly provide guidance on chemical and biological risk. So while its scope is narrower than SCCS, but it uses real-time exposure data and it mainly adheres to SCCS notes of guidance in order to conduct UK-focused risk assessments. And even on the right, we can see the interaction network of these regulatory bodies, like the European Commission and OPSS, they engage actively with industries. ECHA and SCCS, they interact with NGOs, scientific networks, and even the regulatory partners. And the SAGCS, it provides targeted scientific advice to OPSS, ensuring that the regulatory decisions reflect the real world UK exposure. Now, moving on to the next part, that is the NGOs and NPOs. So as we transition from the regulatory framework, so it's very important to spotlight another powerful force that is shaping the cosmetic ingredient, and they are the growing influence of NGOs and NPOs. So here we have shown some groups that are playing key role in speeding up the reforms and even pushing for stricter rules in EU as well as UK. So they are, it's more than just public campaign for these, means they are making smart organized moves that is directly impacting the policy decisions, I would say. So here, if I talk about some NGOs and NPOs like Greenpeace, Healed, Client Earth, Rethink Plastic, European Environmental Bureau, Plastic Soup Foundations, and many more. So all of them are mainly engaged with policymakers in order to drive the regulatory change. For instance, if we talk about Greenpeace UK, so it was very instrumental in driving the UK's 2018 microbead ban. And meanwhile, in the EU, organizations like Plastic Zoom Foundation in Amsterdam and Rethink Plastic in Brussels, they are continuing to champion a full ban on microplastic in cosmetics. And when it comes to PFS, that is very large. It is an even larger group, I would say, around 138 organizations, including Heal in Brussels and Chemtrust in London. They all have came together to sign that ban PFS manifesto, and that calls for urgent EU-wide limits. So NGOs and NPOs, they are not just passive observers. These are very influential stakeholders, and nowadays they are shaping, means they are defining the parameters like what is safe and what actually safe and sustainable mean for the cosmetic industry. Then here we would be taking a much closer look over here about the cosmetic ingredients, means how the regulations are evolving over the Europe and UK. So here we have shown a time-based classification of some regulatory shifts in cosmetic ingredients, especially like how European Union and the UK authorities are enforcing the ingredient safety measures. So we have categorized the ingredients into three key time frames, that is past, present, and future. So firstly, if I talk about the past section, so these are the ingredients that have already completed their transition period with ban or restriction. Mainly they were enforced between 2023 and early 2024, particularly under EU REACH and UK cosmetic regulation framework. So some ingredient example, if I would say like dibutylene compounds or perfluoroheptonic acid. So these were phased out in EU due to toxicity concern or reproductive risk and even persistent environmental hazard. Many others were also there in UK, if I say like trimethylopropane, triacrylate. These were also eliminated under hazard classification in the UK. And in the present category, if we talk about, so these are the substances whose regulatory actions were either implemented or they were significantly updated in early 2025, and their phase out periods are expected to end within the same year. And examples, if I talk about, so nanoscale materials like hydroxyapatite, styrene, acrylate copolymers, and many colloidal metals as well. So they are under much greater scrutiny nowadays, particularly within the EU due to concerns about bioaccumulation and particle size. And ingredients like kojic acid, BHT, alpha-arbutin, these are being restricted, means not that they are not completely banned, but yes, they are restricted with specific concentration threshold that is being introduced by EU, and they are closely mirrored by UK as well. Then if we take a look at the future part, so these ingredients have already been identified like for the upcoming bans or restrictions, and their phase out period stretch beyond late 2025, like into 2026, 27 or beyond. So leading this group, there are high profile substances like PFS, formaldehyde releasing preservative, and even cyclic silicones, so which have drawn increasing attention in Europe, especially for the environmental and health impacts for no doubt. And even microplastic is one of that category. So UK is also likely to do the same, but more gradually or later, I would say. And substance like methyl salicylate or 4-nitrosomorpholine, these are already being proposed for future restriction in the UK. So the UK, while it maintains the alignment in many areas post-Brexit, but it often introduced regulatory adaptations at its own pace. So that makes it crucial for manufacturers also to monitor both regions independently, especially when any manufacturer or company is planning their product lifecycle strategies for European and British markets for both. Now here we would be seeing like what are the factors that are driving the shift towards sustainability in the European beauty industry. So here we have outlined mainly four major forces that are accelerating that shift, and all of these are deeply interconnected across regulatory, consumer, and innovation lenses. So the first driver I would like to talk about, that is consumer demand for eco-friendly products. So according to EU surveys, 73% of EU citizens, European citizens, they have considered that a product environmental impact is must, means whenever they purchase a cosmetic product. So this is the factor that they saw, and that is must for those citizens, consumers. And moreover, 60%, around 60% have already purchased the cosmetic products because of the same factor, that is lower environmental impact. And 38% are those that often, or I would say sometimes, they choose EU eco-label products. So we can see that this demand is not superficial at all. Consumers are now, in actual, they are prioritizing like products should be scientifically backed, clean label, and performance driven. And in both the regions, that is across Europe and UK, younger demographics in particular, they are looking for formulation that are both ethical as well as effective. Second driver or factor, that is regulatory push for sustainability. So the EU regulation has added 56 new fragrance allergens that require transparent labeling. So that has marked a significant shift towards that intensified ingredient scrutiny. And the Directive on Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence, that is CSDDD, that came into effect in July 2024. So it had mandate companies that to human rights need to be assessed and environmental risk has to be assessed throughout their entire value chain. Similarly, the European Green Deal is there. It is also helping in shaping a climate neutral future by 2050. So regulatory alignment is strong. But yes, post-Brexit, the UK is also adapting its own mechanisms, particularly around SPF testing, UV filter control, which may diverge over time as well. The third factor is growing expectation for ethical and transparent sourcing. So consumers nowadays, they are demanding evidence of social responsibility, means this is going just beyond marketing. Buyers are now expecting that ingredient traceability and supplier accountability should be considered. And there are many initiatives which are being taken by major companies as well, that is L'Oreal, Clarins, that aims to create transparency across packaging and raw material supply chain. And even to support this, there are some frameworks like SEDEX, the UN Global Compact, and the ESG benchmarks. They are now widely used in order to document and communicate responsible sourcing practices. The fourth, but not the final driver, that is the rise of green chemistry initiatives. So green chemistry, as we all know, it is now seen as a pillar of competitive advantage. Companies nowadays, they are moving away from conventional additives, means which were used previously like sulfate, parabens, synthetic dyes, and all those companies, they are turning towards biodegradable, renewable, and skin safe ingredient. In 2023 alone, if I talk about, so sustainable packaging and the formulation claims, they had grown dramatically with a clear spike in refillable and plastic-free innovations. So as this landscape is evolving and it will continue to evolve. So one thing is clear that compliance alone is no longer enough, whether it's through due diligence, life cycle assessment, or ethical sourcing frameworks, but the companies or brands, they must demonstrate tangible progress and transparency. Then moving on to the next. So here we have highlighted a small section related to the cosmetic ingredients that are currently under formal restriction or even ban across both, that is European Union and the United Kingdom. But their phase outs are scheduled over the coming years. So let's walk one by one, starting with formaldehyde releasing preservatives. So these are mainly used as antimicrobial agents, and formaldehyde is classified as a known human carcinogen. So even slow releasing versions, it pose health risk at even at low concentration. So both EU and UK, they have issued the labeling requirements for all those products, that are containing these ingredients above 0.001%. And the transition window for this compliance, it extends from July 2022 to July 2026, means during which the formulations must be revised and the appropriate labeling should be applied. Next is nanopolymers like styrene acrylate copolymer. So these are mainly used in cosmetics as UV filter, colorant, or film formers, and they have come under scrutiny in the European Union due to some major concerns like potential skin penetration, and there was not sufficient toxicology data about it as well. So the EU has done, it has confirmed a complete ban on their use in these roles, means in the cosmetic, and the transition period for this category, it spans from Feb to November 2025. Then the next is 4-MBC, that is 4-methyl benzylidene camphor. It is a sort of UV filter which traditionally it was used in sunscreen, and now it is being banned due to its endocrine disrupting and genotoxicity potential. So again, the EU has confirmed that a complete ban would be there, and the transition timeline would be from May 2025 to May 2026. Then we also have vitamin A derivatives over here, which are commonly used in anti-aging and skin conditioning products. So in this category, the EU is not banning them completely, but yes, they have restricted their use based on dose and application area. Especially like in body lotions, it must be 0.05% and 0.3% in other sort of products. And these restrictions means the concerns which has driven these restriction, it is about developmental toxicity from its overexposure. And the transition period here, it is from November 2025 and through May 2027. Next, we have triclosan and triclocarbon as well. These are very well-known antimicrobial agents, but yes, they have been flagged for their endocrine disrupting, carcinogenic, and bioaccumulative properties. So here also the EU is restricting their use, like triclosan is limited to 0.3% and triclocarbon to 0.2%, means depending on the product type. Then the next category is PFAs, that is perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances. So these are the synthetic chemicals as we know, and they are mainly used for texture and conditioning. But yes, now they have been recognized for their persistent bioaccumulation and potential toxicity. So what EU has done, it has confirmed a complete ban on PFS, but it would be effective from July 2025, and there is a longer grace period in this category, means it is until Jan 2027. And the France, if I would say, so the ban is expected to come into force as early as Jan 2000, means January 2026. Finally, one more category we have, that is of microplastics. So these are small plastic particles that are mainly used in exfoliants, fillers, and emulsifiers. So their effects are also very harmful, like their environmental persistence and ecologically harm. So these factors have led to their ban in both the regions, that is EU as well as UK. The UK has banned the microbeads in rinse of product as early as 2018. But yes, the EU broader ban under the microplastic restriction, it was started in 2023 and runs through 2035 with progressive product specific implementation. So, this evolving compliance landscape, it is not just about meeting the deadlines that are set, but yes, it's about future-proofing product portfolios, means in this era that is of heightened safety, transparency, and sustainability expectations. Now, my colleague Priya will take it from here, but just a small note, if you have any questions or any queries, then please feel free to drop them in the Q&A window as it's open. Priya, over to you.
Yeah. So now let's move to a framework that's very important for the manufacturers, formulators, and innovation teams, which helps them to identify and prioritize ingredients replacements in response to these bans and restrictions, which we just talked about. So this is our regulatory innovation catalyst, and this catalyst helps us answer a very fundamental question, that is, where should companies act? How ready are the solutions to replace ingredients that are said to be banned or restricted soon in these two markets, that is EU and UK? So, the purpose of this framework is twofold. First, to map out which alternative ingredients are gaining traction as a viable replacement, and second, to evaluate these alternatives based on two critical dimensions, which is first market and replacement potential, which you can see on the vertical axis. This axis depends on factors such as cost, availability, adoption, and overlapping potential of the alternatives. The second axis is adoption readiness or technology readiness level, which is on the horizontal axis. And this axis reflects the current maturity of the alternative from early stage ideation to commercial availability. And each hexagon that you can see inside the matrix here represents an alternative candidate, and its color matches the ingredient it is meant to replace, shown in the table on the right. So, and now if we look at few impact examples, then if we talk about for MBC, it is a UV filter marked for a complete ban in the EU. So solutions such as lignin-based UV filter and Neo Heliopan, they stand out. Both align very well with green chemistry standards as well as adoption. And if we look at another example, that is formaldehyde releasing preservatives, then solutions such as Glidant Plus and bioethanol based antimicrobial preservatives, these both show very strong potential and are already moving into commercial use. So, what this framework really show us is that regulation is not just a risk, but it's an innovation roadmap, and it helps R&D, regulatory, and sourcing teams prioritize not just the what, but also the when, and also which ingredients are worth investing in now, and which ones need more validation before scaling. So, this is how we turn compliance into a catalyst for innovation. Now, moving on to the next. So, now that we have seen where the innovation is happening in response to these bans and restrictions, let's understand the logic that drives the framework, especially the scoring system that defines each alternative's market and replacement potential. So, this slide presents our strategic assessment framework, which breaks down the four core KPIs we use to evaluate the alternatives. These four KPIs are: first, cost of alternative, weighted at 30%. Second is availability, weighted at 20%. Third is adoption, also weighted at 30%. And then overlapping potential, weighted at 20%. So together, these four KPIs show how each alternative is scored on the vertical axis in the regulatory innovation catalyst we just saw. So Now I'll explain briefly what each of these KPIs means. So when we talk about the cost of alternative, this shows us how economically viable the substitution is. A solution that is much cheaper than current options scores the highest, while anything significantly more expensive will be penalized. So this is very crucial for mass market adoption and large-scale reformulation. Next is availability. Here we assess how easy it is to source the ingredient at scale. Alternatives with stable high volume supply chains score higher, and if the sourcing is limited, the viability of that alternative is lower, regardless of its technical merits. So now another KPI here is adoption, which is about market readiness and traction. And it addresses the question that is the ingredient already is in use, maybe in some other industry? Is it receiving regulatory or consumer approval? So those with high current adoption or strong uptake in the market are scored higher, while those in the niche or experimental phase receive lower scores. Then the last KPI is overlapping potential. So this KPI looks at how easily the alternative can replace or work alongside existing solutions. So the greater the functional overlap in terms of performance, compatibility, or formulation ease, the better will be the score. So each KPI is scored on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 means high value and 1 means low value for each of them. So in short, this framework is what helps the vertical position of each ingredient in the regulatory innovation catalyst we just saw. Now, moving on to the next slide. So this slide presents a comprehensive positioning for ingredient alternatives as per their cumulative and overall score. Each alternative is scored on a scale from low to high for each KPI, represented by colored dots you can see. And for example, within the microplastics category, cellulose microsphere by Nature Beats and seaweed-based alternatives, these both stand out with high scores across availability and adoption. And they also signal their readiness as viable replacements. Similarly, for 4-MBC category, bemotrizinol and lignin-based UV filters, they both demonstrate strong potential due to their favorable cost and market adoption metrics. Now, similarly, in the next slide, the evaluation is continued, focusing on the other ingredients such as vitamin A derivatives, nanopolymers including colloidal silver nanoparticles, and formaldehyde releasing preservatives. Like in vitamin A derivatives, the alternatives such as Kopuchiol, we also call it Bakuchiol, and Silybum extract, they both rank very well and indicating their strong market adoption and overlap with current ingredients. So overall, these evaluation allow us to identify and prioritize the most commercially viable and technically sound alternatives. Next, we have covered players landscape, which shows who is replacing these banned or restricted ingredients with safer and sustainable alternatives. So we have organized this landscape around 4 major bans like vitamin A derivatives, triclosan and triclocarbon, PFAS and microplastics. And we'll take you through some of the key players offering promising substitutes in each of these categories. So starting with vitamin A derivatives. We all know retinol is widely used for its anti-aging benefits, but it often causes irritation and sensitivity. But companies such as Lucas Meyer Cosmetics, they have developed a product known as cycloretin. It is a gentler option uh, and a cyclic natural peptide, which is used to deliver the same benefits with less irritation. And if we look at triclosan and triclocarbon, then replacements, then players such as Simrise and other companies have come up with effective alternatives like SymGuard CD and others. And if we talk about PFAS replacers, then players such as Lubrizol and others are very much active with innovative products such as plant derived alternatives and different safer solutions. Then finally, in the microplastic categories, companies like Evonik uh, are working and are offering a porous silica particles that boost product stability, and they are also non-polluting. So to summarize this, we can say that robust innovations are taking place across all these four categories, with players offering solutions that not only meet regulatory demands but also align with consumer expectations for clean and sustainable beauty. Moving on further, so now that we have seen some key players replacing soon to be banned or restricted ingredients, let's dive deep into a specific example that seeing heightened regulatory attention, like vitamin A derivatives. So these compounds are now restricted in the EU market due to the concerns around developmental toxicity. The SCCS concluded opinion that although these ingredients are safe in controlled doses, but the cumulative exposure from cosmetics, supplements, and food may push 5% of population above EFSA's upper intake level. So this overexposure increases the risk of developmental issues, and the regulation limits usage to 0.05% retinol equivalent in body lotions and 0.3% in other products. And the transition period for this spans from November 25 for new products, with the full market withdrawal of non-compliant items by May 2027. So what is the alternatives? One of the promising solutions is citinol a high purity bakuchiol compound that mimics retinol's benefits without the associated risk. It's extracted through monomolecular technology, and it eliminates unwanted residues like psoralen. So it's not just a safe option, but it is also photostable, ideal for sensitive skin, and as effective as retinol in reducing wrinkles and hyperpigmentations. Plus, it has 60x stronger antioxidant activity than a tocopherol and other similar ingredients. So now moving on to another high alert category, that is triclosan and triclocarbon, both of which have been restricted in the EU for their endocrine disrupting effects and potential for environmental harm. So these compounds were scrutinized in SCCS assessments going as far back as 2008, with the most recent opinion in 2022 concluding that previously allowed levels were not safe for most use cases. Triclosan here contributes to antimicrobial resistance, while triclocarbon amplifies estrogen and testosterone activity, which disturbs hormone sensitive processes and thyroid function. So the new regulation caps triclocarbon at 0.2% cosmetics, except in mouthwash, and triclosan at 0.3% in certain specific products. So new formulation must comply by December 31, 2024, with a market-wide phase out by October 2025. So what is the industry response for this? We can see a standout solution here is SymGuard CD by Symrise, which is a multifunctional hygiene ingredient that is colorless, low odor, and offers broad spectrum protection. It is not only safer, it's also fast acting, readily biodegradable, and tailored for modern hygiene needs. So, by proactively adopting such alternatives, brands can not only navigate regulatory changes but can also position themselves as leaders in safe, effective, and environmentally responsible beauty innovation. Now, at the last, let us look at the strategic pillars that guide cosmetics and ingredient manufacturers in building regulatory ready future proof operations in the European market. So we believe that compliance should not be viewed as a limitation but as a catalyst for innovation and a lever for competitive positioning in the beauty industry's green transformation. So the first pillar is regulatory intelligence integration in R&D. This involves continuous monitoring of evolving EU regulations and incorporating early stage ingredient screening using toxicological databases aligned with REACH and EU and access. And it's equally important to stay ahead of emerging restrictions, such as those we talked about, like microplastics. So, by reformulating early with safer alternatives like cellulose beads. Now, moving on to the second pillar, formulation innovation with a compliance lens. Here, companies should adopt a proactive approach in substituting restricted ingredients with safer approved alternatives. For instance, replacing parabens with ethyl hexide glycerine. There's also a clear need to prioritize bio-based green chemistry alternatives. Now, the third area is enhancing supply chain compliance. So, as regulations tighten, it's essential to enforce supplier audits, checking for REACH registrations, safety documentations, and traceability, and partnering with suppliers who carry third party certifications like Cosmos or EcoCert helps companies reinforce a clean label strategy. And then, fourth, we must balance sustainability with safety. So, conducting LCA backed ingredient selection allow us to understand environmental and human health impacts. Additionally, integrating vegan and cruelty-free standards not only ensures compliance but also aligns with consumer expectations in ethical sourcing. The fifth strategic pillar is about managing allergens and labeling for trust. So, reformulating to exclude substances listed in Annex 3rd, such as linalool and limoline, is increasingly important. Moreover, brands must ensure transparent and compliant labeling by avoiding vague claims like free from and instead. Communicating evidence based safety information to consumers is more important. Lastly, we emphasize the need to drive innovation with regulatory foresight. This means continuously monitoring NGO and regulatory watch lists and proactively managing your ingredient portfolio. So, companies should develop substitution roadmaps well before regulatory bans are enforced. This will ensure business continuity and also the innovation stability. And if I say that at Ingenious eBrain, we help brands not only meet compliance standards, but we also help them embed into innovation, sustainability, and commercial strategies, which helps them create a resilient foundation for growth in regulated, performance-driven market. So this is all about navigating EU cosmetic compliance. Now I would like to request Ananya to take you through our offerings across the value chains.
Thank you, Priya. Um, at Ingenious, we support clients across the entire value chain, right from starting from the raw materials all the way through to the marketing and sales. We can say that we support clients through ideation to commercialization. We are into the market for more than a decade now, and in the personal care sector, we have had the privilege to work with renowned names like L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, Bayer, Kao, Veleda. And on the ingredient side, our engagement includes like players like BSF, DSM, Gawaudo, Senesco, Bungie. Just to mention that this is not an exhaustive list, but highlights some of our key partnerships. If I focus on the slides that is on the screen, and I start with the raw material and ingredient section of first. So we focus on identifying innovative options like biotech derived actives and upcycled ingredients that meet sustainability goals and today's consumer demands. When it comes to product formulation, we go beyond innovation. We help develop the clients the strategic product roadmaps, align new formulation with trends like adaptogens and functional botanicals while ensuring safety and efficacy uh, through thorough assessments. On the manufacturing side, our key priorities include sustainability, energy efficiency, and localization. Also, we focus on the regulatory requirements that are shaping the packaging and labeling sector, with more emphasis on minimalist design and achieving net zero carbon targets. Uh, Next, I come on to the packaging and labeling section. We support clients in standing out through weak signal identification, sustainable packaging strategies, which are responsible, which are also because of responsible sourcing, strict labeling compliance, and effective message testing. Finally, if I talk about the marketing and sales, that's the last uh, step. Marketing nowadays is evolving rapidly with move towards omni-channel and digital experiences, hyper personalization, and purpose-driven branding. We help the clients design go-to-market strategy, commercialization roadmaps, refining the brand positioning, analyze consumer feedback, which also includes social media insights. Now here I'd pause. I'd like to take a pause, and if any one of you have some questions, please feel free to share them in the chat box, and the team is there to respond. From here, I think I would like to pass it on to Thomas, and Thomas can take it forward. Thank you. Thomas, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Yes. Now, so thanks a lot to the colleagues for the great overview. I think we all appreciate the extensive, and we've seen the competence of the team in cosmetics. So we take your questions, if any. And if you don't have questions right now, we obviously are happy to help you. Just get in contact with one of us, and we would be glad to help you with upcoming questions. As I've seen in chat, the presentation will be distributed after the webinar, so you get the information provided, but there's a lot obviously behind the data is already shown, so feel free to contact the team. Okay, I do not see the list of questions. Let's see whether I can check into it. Okay, seems to be none. So I think thanks again to all contributors, and then I would close the webinar. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you